They thought we were primitives with delusions of grandeur, clumsy children fumbling through space in rusted tin cans. They monitored us, laughed at us, dismissed us. But now, the transmissions have stopped. Our silence isn't submission, it's preparation. Because Earth is done playing nice. What would make an entire galaxy flinch at a single broadcast? What words could make ancient empires pause mid-conquest, their fleets hovering silent above conquered worlds? It wasn't a weapon that sent shivers down their spines. It was a message, a single unencrypted signal that echoed through jump gates and wormholes, drifting through the black like a promise etched in fire. The voice was unmistakably human, rough, weathered, calm. But behind that voice, there was thunder. We held back, but no more. Let's rewind. Decades ago, humanity stumbled upon its first deep space anomaly, an artificial object, half buried in the frozen sands of Europa. It wasn't alien tech in the way we imagined, not sleek, not smooth, but industrial, ancient, and powerful. The runes etched along its side pulsed faintly, like something still, alive. We studied it, reverse-engineered fragments, and unknowingly tapped into something forbidden. The alien powers called it the Shard of Valar, a remnant of a war that predates stars. And when it flared to life under human hands, the galaxy noticed. But they didn't attack, not at first. They sent emissaries cloaked in empathy and logic, warning us with carefully chosen words. That technology is not meant for species so young. You risk annihilation, not from us, but from what lies beyond. To some, it sounded like concern. To others, a veiled threat. Earth's leaders listened. They complied. The shard was sealed, buried again, this time under Mars' deepest crust. Humanity returned to its steady march forward, faster than light drives, lunar colonies, the ArcNet. But some remembered. The ones who touched the shard, scientists who began to dream in languages not their own, children born with glyphs embedded in their DNA, soldiers who watched machines whisper to them like gods. A quiet network formed in the shadows. Project Null Dawn. Not a rebellion, not yet. A contingency. As the years passed, humanity grew stronger, faster, stranger. We began noticing inconsistencies, interference in quantum comms, star mapping data altered subtly, systems erased from memory. Every time humanity reached a threshold, made a leap forward, something pulled us back. Not openly, not violently, but like invisible shepherds keeping their flock in line. Then came the breaking point. The Tanari Dominion. A collective of telepathic warlords launched an observation mission to our edge systems. Earth welcomed them, cautiously. They said they came in peace, but peace doesn't bring orbital dreadnoughts large enough to cast shadows over continents. They demanded access to Earth's archives. And when denied, they responded by dismantling the Vesta relay in full view of Terran satellites. No casualties. But the message was clear. Stay where we put you. It was the first open act of galactic intimidation, and it was the last straw. Within 24 hours, Earth's silence fell. No signals, no trade, no diplomatic pings. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like Earth went dark. But in truth, we went deep, beneath the crusts of our worlds, inside cloaked hulls beyond Pluto's orbit. Something ancient stirred, no longer chained by the galaxy's rules. Humanity had studied their weapons, mimicked their tech, adapted their strategies, but always just enough to survive. Now, we're done surviving. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, HFY ApexChronicles is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the universe, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us grow this community together. Because this story is just beginning. The first ship that broke through the fold barrier didn't fly like anything in known space. It moved in jumps, vanishing and reappearing in pulses, vending space so violently it left ripples detectable from 3 systems away. No insignias, no call sign, just a single transmission on repeat. Transmission protocol. Ultimatum 1. Begin. No one knew what Ultimatum 1 was. Not the Galactic Conclave, not the arcane cours of Loraveth, not even the ancient watchers of Selkaruan. But they felt it, like the air before a storm, like gravity shifting in your bones. And when Earth's voice came through again, this time on every channel, every spectrum, in every dialect, the galaxy listened. We held back, not out of weakness, but out of mercy. The message didn't end. It cut. The voice that echoed across the stars wasn't angry. It was precise, calm. And yet, every syllable landed like a blade drawn across the spine of history. We held back, not out of weakness, but out of mercy. That phrase was dissected by every galactic AI, replayed in slow motion by the Council of Suns, analyzed in the crystalline vaults of the mind architects. But no analysis could explain the feeling that swept through those who heard it, as if the voice itself wasn't just speaking words, but delivering judgment, a reckoning wrapped in diplomacy. The galactic powers tried to respond, but Earth didn't answer. Not through comms, not through envoys, not through threats. The Sol system was locked, shielded by something no one recognized. Entire fleets warped in, only to find their sensors scrambled, propulsion distorted, AI matrices silent. One vessel, the Xenor-class dreadnought Venerant's Oath, managed to approach Pluto's orbit before all 2,000 souls aboard suddenly went offline. Not dead, not injured, just comatose. Their minds frozen mid-thought. The ship drifted. Its final broadcast contained only static, and a single word whispered in an Earth tongue: observe. And so the galaxy did. They turned their eyes toward the blue planet once mocked as backward. But now something had changed. Cities once bustling with open comms and orbital traffic now pulsed with synchronized energy signatures, massive, underground power blooms that hummed like a sleeping leviathan. Lunar facilities began moving, literally, rearranging themselves as if in response to a code buried deep beneath the regolith. Mars' polar regions lit up with heat spikes, not from terraforming, but from weapons testing. Weapons designed not for planetary defense, but system-level eradication. Earth hadn't just been preparing for war. We had been studying the rules of war, and quietly rewriting them. For centuries, humanity had played within the galactic sandbox, pretending to struggle with rudimentary faster-than-light travel, feigning limitations in computational capacity, acting as though we didn't see the cracks in the walls of the universe. All the while, hidden under layers of misdirection and classified black sites, Earth had been nurturing its real power, the Null Protocol. It wasn't just a doctrine. It was a framework, a blueprint for how to fight powers that considered themselves untouchable. The Tanari, the Grask Imperium, the silent architects of the void. We knew we couldn't match them in scale, but we didn't have to, because we found something they'd all forgotten, or maybe chose to forget. The truth that had once devoured gods and burned galaxies into silence. Entropy. Not in the classical sense, but weaponized entropy, artificial decay triggered on command. We had taken the raw physics of collapse and turned it into a knife. Shields became brittle. Hulls corroded in seconds. Neural links desynchronized mid-thought. Their greatest strength, technology so advanced it had become religion, became their greatest vulnerability. And still, Earth said nothing, until the incident on Keshran IV. A Terran expeditionary unit, operating under covert assignment, had been captured while investigating a rumored precursor ruin. Galactic law dictated that neutral science teams be treated with respect. But the ruling authority of the region, the Iovari Ascendancy, considered it an opportunity to make an example. They executed the humans publicly, 12 of them. Bound in energy chains, their deaths broadcast as a message. You are not above the law of the stars. The footage was leaked. The reaction wasn't outrage, it was silence. No threats, no demands. Earth's response was methodical and final. The Iovari system went dark in under 9 hours. No orbital strike, no fleet, just silence. Not even debris. Observers from nearby systems reported that planets simply vanished, like they'd never been there. Star charts rewritten. Gravitational readings flattened, like the system had been folded into itself and erased. No flare, no light, just the void. Galactic emergency councils convened. Hypotheses flew. Theories ranged from time-space compression to a reawakened precursor artifact. But in the center of every conversation was Earth. Suddenly, humanity wasn't a minor power in a distant spiral arm. We were the question that no one could answer, the variable that didn't fit the equation, the wild card with eyes wide open, smiling beneath our shadows. But not all galactic powers feared us. Some saw opportunity. The Vraxian clade, a hive mind species with colonies across 12 sectors, proposed an alliance, not out of loyalty, but fear of obsolescence. They offered data, trade routes, even breeding rights, anything to secure a pact. But Earth declined, politely. We are not accepting vassals, the reply stated. Stand on your own, or fall when the winds shift. Other factions panicked. The Shelvorth Syndicate tried to strike preemptively, launching a cloaked raid on an asteroid believed to house a human data vault. The strike team never made it back. Instead, their fleet's own AI turned on them, broadcasting live as they were sealed inside their own ships and vented into space. And from somewhere near Saturn's orbit, a strange signal hummed through subspace, a signal in perfect mimicry of the Shelvorth genetic code, repeating one phrase endlessly. We held back, but no more. Fear became prophecy, and Earth still hadn't moved a single fleet. The real question on every mind now was chillingly simple. What happens when we know the galactic powers had underestimated Earth for so long that it became almost laughable? They viewed humanity as a curious anomaly, a species too eager, too desperate, to prove itself among the stars. Our history had been defined by war, by struggle, by defiance, and they saw that as weakness. But there was something they couldn't account for, our ability to adapt, not just to survive, but to evolve in ways that turned every obstacle into an advantage. The zero drift had been the first clue, a technology once thought impossible, the ability to fold time itself, but not just in short bursts, as most species had achieved. Earth's scientists, pushing the limits of theoretical physics, had perfected the long-range drift. Not only could we jump between systems in an instant, we could jump across entire timelines, leaving no trace of our presence, a perfect ghost fleet. The shift was so sudden, so inconceivably fast, that it shocked even the most sophisticated monitoring systems. No fleet could track a ship that was both a part of the present and the past, existing in multiple points of time. No weapons could lock onto a target that had already faded, like smoke caught in the wind. Our ships didn't just move through space, they moved through time. And now, that technology had been weaponized. In the secret archives beneath the surface of Earth's moon, Project Null Dawn had laid the foundation for humanity's ultimate deterrent. The Dark Star Orbital Array, a vast, sprawling network of quantum disruptors, wasn't just a weapons platform. It was a deadlock against every known form of galactic power. No one had thought to check the moon. It was a relic, a place for humanity's long-forgotten past. But buried there, hidden beneath layers of bureaucratic red tape, was the final fail-safe, a system that could disable any starship within range. The technology was simple, in a way. A carefully orchestrated quantum interference wave that could short-circuit the core drive of any vessel. It didn't destroy ships. It froze them in time. For hours, days, even years, without warning, a ship would lose all spatial function, unable to escape or communicate. It wasn't destruction. It was stasis. And while the rest of the galaxy still believed they had superior weapons, they didn't realize that Earth had already stolen the one thing that mattered most: time. The first hint of this silent power came when a fleet of fraction ships, equipped with their advanced cloaking technology, attempted to invade Earth's outer system. With no warning, the fleet disappeared, every single ship, even the ones in hyperspace, locked in place as if their entire existence had been frozen. Sensors across dozens of systems went dead, and when the ships finally resumed normal operation, they were no longer anywhere near Earth, flung far across the galaxy, billions of light-years away from their intended destination. No one knew how it happened. No one could explain the disappearance. And that was the key. The uncertainty was what gnawed at the heart of the galactic powers. They couldn't touch us. They couldn't predict us. And every day they waited, humanity grew stronger. They had already learned to manipulate their own genetic code, adjusting their biology to withstand the harshest environments, enhancing their physical abilities to match the best of the galaxy's greatest warriors. There were whispers of Terran soldiers who could withstand the crushing pressures of neutron stars, who could fight in atmospheres thick with poison gas without breathing apparatus, and even adapt in battle with a speed no other species could match. It was a slow buildup, an invisible war. But every conflict, every small act of defiance, had been building towards something larger. Humanity was no longer just adapting. We were evolving faster than any species had ever imagined. The galactic powers had failed to notice until it was far too late. It began with small skirmishes, blips on the galactic radar. A fleet of Grexen raiders intercepted an Earth transport ship, only to be destroyed in a single coordinated attack by Terran warships that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. The Grexen, known for their advanced tracking systems, couldn't even lock onto their targets, and when the battle was over, the entire fleet was gone, vanished into the same full barrier technology that humanity had mastered. A singular, synchronized strike that turned their entire warband into nothing but cosmic dust. And still, the galaxy did not wake up. But then came the revelation, the breaking point, the event that would forever change the perception of Earth among the stars. The El-Shir Coalition, a massive interstellar alliance formed by several ancient species, launched an expedition to Earth's moon. Their mission was simple: to take control of the resources beneath the lunar surface, rumored to be linked to Earth's unexpected rise in technological advancement. They never reached the surface. When their flagship arrived in orbit, it was immediately caught in an electromagnetic trap. Its systems went haywire. Navigation failed. Artificial intelligence went rogue, forcing the crew to abandon ship. What followed was beyond any explanation. The ship was pulled into a pocket dimension, a subspace vacuum where time and space were no longer linked in any recognizable pattern. The crew vanished without a trace. Not dead, not destroyed, just gone. And again, Earth remained silent. No response, no triumph, only a subtle shift in the cosmic tide. The galaxy's greatest and oldest powers had finally begun to realize something they never imagined possible. Earth was no longer a child. We had not only caught up to them, we had surpassed them. But the galactic powers had their own response. Behind closed doors, they convened, whispers of an alliance to take Earth down, to quash the growing threat before it could spread further. They feared that humanity's unchecked potential was too dangerous, too unpredictable. If Earth could erase entire fleets, if it could bend time, manipulate space, and evolve beyond all known limits, what would stop it from conquering the galaxy? What would stop Earth from becoming not just a new power, but the only power? The galactic leaders knew something had to be done, but they also knew that Earth was no longer a planet to be reasoned with. The next move was inevitable: war. And this time, there would be no negotiations. The shift from silent observation to action was swift and irreversible. As the galactic powers had gathered in secret, plotting their next move against Earth, they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated humanity's ability to read the signals, to understand the game before it was played. We had been watching them for far longer than anyone realized. Our preparation wasn't just technological, it was psychological. Every fleet's movements, every diplomatic maneuver, every covert operation, they had all been cataloged, analyzed, and cross-referenced against humanity's own unpredictable nature. The first to move was the Tanar'ri Imperium, a militaristic race that valued strength above all else. When they finally sent their largest armada to Earth's doorstep, their message was clear. You are not our equal. Stand down or face annihilation. They believed their fleet's sheer size would force Earth to capitulate. The Tanar'ri had never faced a species capable of standing against them, not for lack of strength, but because no one had ever dared. They made their mistake when they arrived at the fringes of the Sol system, expecting to witness the fear of a species that had always been small, isolated, and underdeveloped by galactic standards. What they found, however, was the inexplicable. At first, there was nothing. Silence. The Tanar'ri fleet arrived in a perfect formation, cloaked by their advanced stealth technology, but nothing in the system responded. No planetary defense systems, no ships to meet them in orbit, no communication. Then came the signal, a single burst of data, so large that it nearly overloaded their sensors. The signal was encoded in human language, compressed to the edge of possibility. But when decrypted, the message was chilling in its simplicity. We warned you. The Tanar'ri fleet's captains were confused, but not afraid. That is, until the first ship began to move on its own. A single Terran destroyer, the Vigilant, emerged from the dark side of Mars, its hull previously masked by electromagnetic shielding. It accelerated at an impossible rate, appearing in the Tanar'ri formation like a ghost cutting through the ether. In a moment that stunned the Tanar'ri commanders, the Vigilant released a burst of electromagnetic energy, an EMP pulse so powerful that it shut down every single system aboard the lead Tanar'ri vessel. No shields, no engines, the communication systems, obliterated. And then came the second pulse. As the Vigilant deployed its attack, the Tanar'ri fleet attempted to retaliate with their advanced missile swarms, but they were already too late. The electromagnetic waves had knocked out their systems, and with them, the tactical advantage they had always relied on. What they didn't realize was that the Vigilant wasn't alone. Dozens of Earth warships, hidden in the depths of the asteroid belt, moved into position, ships that had been waiting, not in the shadows, but in the folds of space and time itself. The Tanar'ri fleet tried to escape, but they couldn't. The fold barrier technology that Earth had perfected in secret now had its first public display. Every ship that tried to break from formation found themselves locked in stasis, frozen mid-maneuver. It was as though time itself refused to move forward. A standoff that lasted hours, and yet to those trapped in the stasis fields, it felt like 1,000 years. At the center of it all stood Earth's voice once again, calm and unwavering. This is not an invitation to battle. This is a lesson we hope you understand. We hold back not because we must, but because we choose to. The Tanar'ri fleet was dismantled without a single shot fired. Their ships weren't destroyed. They were rendered inert, frozen in the void. The Vigilant's crew, having already achieved their objective, set the remaining ships adrift, their systems still flickering with static. It was a message to the galaxy, clear and precise. Earth was not to be underestimated. The response from the galactic powers was swift but fragmented. The Shelvorth Syndicate, feeling the growing unease within their own ranks, began to rally support from other smaller systems, offering alliances and trade deals, all aimed at turning the tide against Earth. Meanwhile, the Vraxian Clade, still reeling from their failed raid on Earth's moon, began lobbying for an immediate war council to assess the existential threat humanity now posed. But in their haste, they overlooked one critical truth. Earth wasn't just responding to attacks. Earth was playing a much larger game. one that had been set in motion long before the first fleet had even entered the Sol system. In the shadow of the moon, beneath layers of rock and metal, the real weapon, the catalyst, was nearing completion. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a planetary-level defense system that spanned across Earth, Mars, and the Moon. The catalyst was powered by the singularity of the now-dead supermassive black hole in the center of the Milky Way, a technology humanity had reverse-engineered and perfected. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a fleet. It was something far more devastating. It was a weapon that could unmake matter at its core, a system that could disassemble entire star systems from the inside out, reducing them to nothing but cosmic dust, scattered across the void. But still, Earth waited, patient, silent. It wasn't until the HFY ascendancy, the last of the galaxy's so-called neutral powers, began negotiations with Earth that the true stakes were revealed. The HFY had always been the diplomats, the peacemakers. They saw themselves as the voice of reason among the stars. But Earth's message was blunt. They made no offer of peace, no promise of compromise. The message sent back was a simple command. We will hold no negotiations. We will not be moved. The HFY, having long been a voice of reason in galactic affairs, hesitated. Their leaders saw the future unraveling before their eyes. What happens if Earth activates the catalyst? The question rippled through the galaxy, but it was too late. The silence had already turned to tension. The final warning had already been sent. Earth's ultimatum had been made clear. And now, there was no turning back. The galaxy, once a vast, interconnected web of cooperation and fragile peace, now stood on the precipice of a cataclysmic war. The HFY ascendancy's refusal to mediate only accelerated the inevitable. The galaxy had long assumed that the Terran response would be typical, a negotiation, an offer of peace, some form of compromise to prevent the looming destruction. But humanity was no longer the peaceful species it once was. The long silence had not been a sign of weakness, but a quiet preparation for the final act. The ultimatum had been delivered, and the galaxy had failed to understand its significance. As word of Earth's technological prowess and military capabilities spread, alliances began to shift. The once invincible Tanarry Imperium found itself on the defensive, its once feared fleet now a disassembled collection of broken ships. Even their vast intelligence network, which had monitored every corner of the galaxy, could no longer trace the movements of Terran ships. They couldn't predict the unexpected folds of time, or the advanced systems humanity had put in place to thwart their every effort. But the true turning point came when the galactic powers held their final summit on the edge of the Delos Rift, a neutral zone where representatives of every major faction convened. It was here that the fate of the galaxy would be decided, and it was here that the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful empires met to discuss their last-ditch efforts to deal with the Terran threat. The council chamber, housed within a massive space station orbiting the rift, was filled with representatives of the 5 most powerful factions in the galaxy: the Tanarry Imperium, the Shelvorth Syndicate, the Vraxian Clade, the Elshir Coalition, and the HFY Ascendancy. The air was thick with tension. It was no longer about alliances or trade. It was about survival. At the heart of the summit was a holographic projection of Earth, projected in vivid detail. It was a beautiful world, lush green forests, oceans teeming with life, cities sprawling across continents. But there was something unnerving about the image. It wasn't just the planet itself. It was the message the projection conveyed. In every inch of space, in every blinking light of the satellite systems orbiting Earth, there was an unmistakable sense of control. The Tanarry, still reeling from their defeat, were the first to speak. General Suroth, the grizzled warlord of the Imperium, stood up and slammed his fist onto the table. His voice boomed across the chamber. We are dealing with a monster, a species that has not only the will to survive, but the power to destroy entire civilizations with a flick of a switch. We cannot allow this threat to exist. We must act, and we must act now. His words were met with uneasy nods from the Vraxians, who had suffered immensely at the hands of Terran technology. The Vraxian leader, High Commander Zakar, snarled as he spoke. Their time-folding technology is a blight on the universe. If they are allowed to master the manipulation of time, there will be no future, no galaxy, no order. The Shelvorth Syndicate, known for their mercantile wisdom and ruthless pragmatism, remained silent. Their representative, Eldrin Kor, was a quiet but calculating figure. He studied the holographic image of Earth with a detached expression. Perhaps there is another way, he mused, his voice cold. If we cannot defeat them, perhaps we can negotiate with them. They are, after all, still a young species. Perhaps if we offer them trade, an exchange of knowledge, they might reconsider their path of aggression. The room fell silent. Eldrin's proposal was met with derision. The Iovari, the most diplomatic of the galaxy's powers, had already attempted negotiation, but Earth's response had been clear. We will not be moved. It was at that moment that the Elshir representative, Aranis Valrath, stood up. The Elshir had long considered themselves the keepers of galactic peace. They were a species of unparalleled wisdom, living on the precipice of ascension. Aranis was their brightest mind, a strategist whose influence extended beyond the borders of his people. We are not blind to the fact that Earth is not what it seems, he said, his voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. We have watched them grow from a fragile species into something far more dangerous. But we must ask ourselves, why now? Why has Earth chosen this moment to act? Why do they hold back the catalyst? His words hung in the air, but no one answered. The question was too profound, too unsettling. What was Earth's true plan? Was it simply to assert dominance, or was there something deeper at play? The leaders in the room knew that the answer lay hidden beneath the surface, a secret humanity had not shared. And that secret, once revealed, would forever change the course of galactic history. For Aranis, the answer was clear. Earth was no longer a species with a future. It was a species that had chosen to define its own destiny. By holding back the catalyst, the Terrans were sending a message far more potent than any fleet or weapon could convey. They were saying, "We are not your pawns. We will no longer be bound by your rules, your alliances, or your fears." The time to negotiate had passed. The summit continued for hours, but no solution was found. The arguments grew more heated. Fear ran rampant. It was clear that the galactic powers could no longer stand idly by. They would have to make a choice: to risk everything by challenging Earth directly, or to attempt to reach an accord that would leave them all vulnerable to humanity's growing power. And in the shadows, unseen by all, humanity watched. Earth had no need for this summit. The decision had already been made. Earth had one final weapon, a weapon that the galactic powers would not see coming. The catalyst was not just a planetary defense system. It was a warning, a tool of ultimate power, designed to ensure that humanity would never again be reduced to a mere bystander in the vast, unforgiving universe. But even as the leaders of the galaxy plotted, humanity had already taken their next step. The final phase of the plan had begun. And now, the clock was ticking. The galaxy was on edge, teetering at the precipice of a war it had never seen before. The leaders of the 5 most powerful factions, now locked in their own deliberations, faced a singular truth. The game was no longer in their hands. The future of the entire galaxy had been shifted onto the shoulders of a single species, humanity. Earth's move had been calculated, precise, and the galaxy had failed to recognize it in time. Now it was too late. Deep within Earth's secretive military compounds, the final phase of the Catalyst project was nearing completion. It had started as an experiment, an unassuming defense mechanism designed to protect Earth from cosmic threats, an ultimate safeguard in case humanity was ever pushed too far. But as the Terran fleet had grown, as humanity had expanded beyond their homeworld, it had evolved into something far greater, an instrument of unimaginable power. The catalyst wasn't just a weapon. It was the key to an entirely new form of galactic sovereignty. Humanity had learned the art of cosmic manipulation long before their galactic counterparts had even begun to understand the power of subspace travel. The catalyst itself was a system built on the manipulation of singularities, the dark holes of the universe, harnessed and controlled. What was thought to be the ultimate weapon was in fact an intricate web of multiple layers, each one interwoven with calculations that bent time, space, and energy to its will. It was clear now. The catalyst could rewrite the very structure of reality, and humanity had the means to activate it at will. Earth had kept the catalyst hidden, along with other revolutionary technologies, because it knew that any revelation of their existence would be met with fear, with jealousy, and ultimately with conflict. But what had once been a distant possibility, a fail-safe, had become the centerpiece of humanity's new era. The message was clear. We will not be your subordinates. We will not be your pawns. We are humanity, and we control the future. Even as the galaxy's most powerful civilizations scrambled to make their final decisions, the world leaders on Earth gathered in a secure facility beneath the moon. The meeting was tense. The air was thick with anticipation. For the first time in recorded history, the nations of Earth, united under the banner of the United Terran Government, were facing a decision that would define their future. The room was filled with the brightest minds: diplomats, scientists, military commanders, and strategists. At the center of it all stood President Alexandria Valora, the leader of humanity's united forces. She had risen to power in a time of uncertainty, but now, as Earth's most formidable weapon was coming online, her role had never been more critical. Her voice echoed across the chamber as she addressed the gathered council. We have no choice. The galaxy has pushed us to this point. We offered peace. We offered cooperation. We gave them our silence. But now they know. The time for restraint is over. We will not be the prey. We will be the predators. And if the galaxy does not understand that, if they choose war, we will give them a war like no other. Her words carried weight. No one argued. There was no time for dissent, for questioning. It had been months, years, even since humanity had begun preparing for this moment, since Earth's greatest minds had come together to craft a plan so bold, so daring, that no one could even fathom its scope. Above them, in the asteroid belt, the Terran fleet assembled. It was a sight no one had ever imagined, an armada that stretched beyond the eye's reach. Over 1,000 ships, each one a technological marvel in its own right, stood ready. These were no ordinary warships. They were equipped with quantum drive engines, subspace transistors, and the ability to manipulate gravity itself. But more importantly, they were armed with the catalyst. On Earth, in the heart of a continent once known as Africa, the final stages of activation took place. Beneath the surface, hidden in caverns deeper than the oceans, the catalyst's core was ignited. In that instant, the very laws of the universe seemed to tremble. An unimaginable energy surged through the core, its power radiating outward in silent waves. The Earth's atmosphere crackled as it adjusted to the shift. The ground beneath humanity's feet vibrated with the pulse of the catalyst's activation, but its full extent remained a secret. The only sign of its true might was the gradual disappearance of the stars on the horizon. The galactic powers, still unaware of the true nature of the catalyst, continued to prepare for war. Their fleets, already beginning to move into position, were unaware that their every move had been anticipated. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and humanity had already made its first move. On the Delos Rift, the diplomatic summit raged on, but its significance had all but faded. The galaxy's leaders had underestimated the human resolve. They had assumed that the Terrans, young and untested, would crumble in the face of overwhelming force. But the truth was becoming undeniable. Humanity was no longer the weak, fragile species it had once been. The first real sign of Earth's power came when the Tanari Imperium attempted to launch a preemptive strike against a Terran outpost on the outskirts of the Sol system. The Tanar'ri warships, having rebuilt their fleets after their disastrous defeat, were poised to deliver a crippling blow. They fired their first salvo, a barrage of energy projectiles, aimed at the defenseless outpost. But before the projectiles could hit, they suddenly stopped in midair, as though an invisible force had frozen them in place. The ships fired again, and the same thing happened. The Tanar'ri commanders were baffled. Their weapons, their most trusted tools of war, were now rendered useless. And then, from the darkness of the void, came a single message, broadcast across every frequency in the galaxy. "We warned you." The catalyst had begun its work. The Tanar'ri ships, one by one, fell silent as their systems began to malfunction. The energy shields that had once been their greatest asset flickered, then collapsed. Weapons systems misfired. The entire fleet was locked in place, unable to move, unable to fire. The warships had become little more than floating debris in the vast emptiness of space. The message was clear. Humanity was not only capable of defending itself, it was capable of reshaping the universe according to its will. The galaxy's powers were stunned. The Shelvorth Syndicate, having attempted to rally the smaller factions into a unified front, could only watch as their plans fell apart. The Vraxian Clade, having invested too much in their war against humanity, found their ships locked in stasis, unable to escape the growing influence of the catalyst. And even the Elshir coalition, whose leaders had once predicted that peace would prevail, now saw the entire galaxy teetering on the edge of annihilation. For humanity, the moment had come. The universe had been warned. And now, the only question that remained was, would the galaxy choose war, or would it be forced to recognize the new order Earth had established? The galaxy was holding its breath, suspended in the darkness of space, as the ripples of Earth's power spread far and wide. The silence in the void was suffocating. The galactic powers, once the supreme rulers of the stars, found themselves paralyzed, caught in the throes of a new era, an era where their authority was no longer absolute. Humanity's ultimatum had been made clear, and the consequences of ignoring it were already unfolding in real time. The Tanar'ri fleet, once considered a behemoth in the galaxy, was now nothing more than a wrecked remnant. A few desperate ships, attempting to flee, were caught in the gravitational web that Earth had so effortlessly woven. The Shelvorth Syndicate's economic power had been crippled as their trade routes came to a halt, unable to bypass the advanced subspace barriers humanity had erected. Even the Elshir, wise beyond their years and accustomed to a galaxy of balance, now saw their hopes of peaceful resolution dashed in a single strike. And yet it was the Vraxians who truly began to understand the significance of what was happening. The species known for their terrifying, insect-like appearance and ruthless conquest of their enemies had always believed themselves to be the pinnacle of evolutionary and military superiority. Their soldiers were bred for war, their technology designed for domination, and their culture rooted in the idea that they would one day rule the stars. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were witnessing their fall from grace. Inside the Vraxian fleet's command center, High Commander's car paced back and forth, his mandibles clicking in agitation. The once unified war machine of his species was now splintering. Fleets that had been on the offensive against human colonies were suddenly disabled, their communication systems overridden, and their weapons silenced. The catalyst, Earth's greatest weapon, was now in full effect. Entire swaths of Vraxian forces were rendered useless, as if the very fabric of their military might have been unraveled by some unseen hand. "We have miscalculated," Zakar muttered, the realization dawning on him like a slow, crushing weight. "They are no longer the prey we once thought them to be. Earth is not simply another faction. It is a force unto itself. They have mastered not only the tools of war, but the very laws of nature." But even as the Vraxian High Command began to unravel, humanity was not content to simply strike fear into the hearts of its enemies. President Alexandria Valora, now the undisputed leader of a united Earth, knew that this moment, the moment of victory, was but a stepping stone. What came next was the true test of Earth's resolve. Would humanity seize the galaxy, or would they offer a path to peace? Would the galaxy come to terms with the new order, or would they fight until the last star was consumed by the fires of war? The leaders of the remaining factions were forced into a delicate dance. The Teneri Imperium, their fleets in disarray, were now seeking allies where they had once thought themselves invincible. The Shelvorth Syndicate, always pragmatic, reached out to Earth with an offer, a treaty, an exchange of resources, and the promise of a shared future. They would offer Earth a seat at the table, a place in the Galactic Council, in exchange for peace. The Elshire, perhaps the most diplomatic of all the galactic powers, sent emissaries to Earth, hoping to broker a final accord. They had seen the writing on the wall. They knew that the days of their supremacy were numbered. What they had failed to understand was that the Terrans had never wanted power. They had wanted something far more elusive: freedom. The freedom to shape their own destiny, the freedom to choose their own path, no matter the cost. But Valora knew the cost was steep. "We cannot go back," she said to her council as the emissaries arrived. "They've seen our power. We've crossed the threshold. If we extend a hand now, they will see it as weakness. The galaxy must understand. Earth does not need their approval. We never did, but we will take the seat we have earned, and we will decide what that seat represents." Her words were met with nods of agreement. The Terran Council, a blend of military strategists and brilliant minds, had no illusions about the path ahead. They had already prepared their fleets for a galaxy that was now theirs to navigate. The Catalyst, though now under control, remained a silent threat, a reminder to all that Earth's will could bend space and time itself. As emissaries from the galactic powers arrived at Earth's gates, they were met with a cold reception. No longer would humanity be expected to bow to the will of others. No longer would they play second fiddle in a galaxy dominated by forces that had failed to recognize the potential of their people. Earth was no longer a fledgling power. It was an empire in its own right, and it would not be swayed by those who had once thought themselves its superiors. In the council chambers of Earth's capital, President Valora addressed the galactic ambassadors directly. "We've waited long enough. We've held our tongues and kept to the shadows of this galaxy, but no longer. This is Earth's time, and we will shape the future as we see fit. You may choose to join us in this new era, or you may choose to fight. But know this: Earth does not fear the consequences. We've seen the worst of the universe, and we've survived. Now it is your turn to decide." Her voice, calm yet filled with an unshakable conviction, reverberated across the galaxy. The message had been sent. The galaxy was at a crossroads. It could no longer ignore Earth's power, and it could no longer overlook humanity's capacity for survival. For the first time in the galaxy's history, Earth stood at the apex of its power. The future was no longer a mystery. It was in humanity's hands. The stars, once the domain of the few, were now open for all who dared to claim them. But the cost of such a claim was high. The galaxy would never be the same. As the ambassadors returned to their respective fleets, their faces etched with uncertainty, the final question lingered in the air. Would the galaxy submit to humanity's new order, or would it challenge the rising power of Earth? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the era of silence had ended. The era of Earth's dominance had begun.